time of year. Kids all over the nation are headed back to school, and we're going to be talking about that today. Speech therapy services in the public schools. Don't go away. So welcome back, Lingo S Roo Troop. It is great to be back with you after yet another little hiatus from filming. I apologize. I don't know about you guys, but moms and dads, can you relate to this at all? School, the back to school time is the most stressful time of my entire year. I don't know what it is. Every year I know it's coming. Every year I have plenty of months of summer, or well, in our case, just a few weeks, 6 weeks, to prepare for it. But for some reason, every single year, it catches me off guard, and the buying of the books and the school supplies and all of that stuff just about puts me over the edge every single time. So again, I hope you use that time, that break in uploads, to go back and look at some of our other content and go back and maybe catch some of the videos that you've missed up to this point. I just want to give you a quick reminder. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button. This is a free service provided by YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything, so go ahead and click the subscribe button, and then if you click the little bell notification icon, they will actually let you know and notify you every time I upload new content, so you're not going to want to miss that. But yeah, guys, like I said, today we're talking about this idea of speech therapy services in the school. If you've watched some of my videos, you know that I'm a private speech pathologist. I have worked in the schools. I worked in a couple of different private school settings, and I did some internships in grad school in the public school setting. But the clinical services that we offer, the one-on-one or the small group setting, is very different oftentimes than what kiddos receive in the school. I know there are a lot of you that are joining us from other parts of the world, but I'm going to be speaking mainly from my knowledge of the American school system, and I'd love for you to interact. If you're not from the States, I'd love for you to interact in the comments below, or go over and interact on our Facebook page and kind of let the community know, how is it the same or how is it different in the country in which you're finding these videos as well. I just think that'd be kind of cool to hear how the services are the same or different. So we're going to be talking about services in the States. You know, back in the 70s, I think it was 1975, I believe, or right around in there, they started kind of looking at this idea of how to provide better services in the public school for kiddos with difficulties and disabilities. And that's when they started this idea of a public law that would ensure services to those kiddos. Fast forward to 1990, the law was revised, and it was revised to include kind of 6 different ideas, 6 different things that they were going to ensure based on this public law that was revised in 1990. If your kiddo is in the school system, we'll be talking about a lot of terms and things that you are probably very familiar with. If they are not yet in school, we're going to be talking about that too, kind of things to expect and ways that you can kind of partner in this process and really engage in this process to get the most for your child. Right? So this revision in 1990 ensured 6 different things. First, it ensured that each child that qualifies, that's found to be eligible for services, would receive an individualized educational plan. Okay, what is that? Well, this individual education plan, or the IEP, is just that. It is a plan for the individual, recognizing that this child has some difficulties, and this child needs different supports and a different plan of attack, right, than maybe another child in his or her classroom. So this IEP is a legally binding document. It's a document that a team of professionals, most likely the homeroom teachers, the speech pathologists, other therapists in the process, maybe the school psychologist, they form this team and they look together at this individual child to see what's the best educational plan for this kiddo. The second thing is that it ensures free, appropriate public education. Okay, so these services should not cost you anything. They are given as part of the public school process. Now, along those lines, and we're going to be talking about eligibility here in a little bit longer, but we have to kind of think about this for what it is, right? Because they are offering these services free of charge, and they are offering these services to a lot of kiddos, right? When we're providing free services to a lot of kiddos, that's going to look very different than the one-on-one, more intensive services that maybe you pay privately for, or that are maybe provided through your medical insurance benefits. Okay, the third thing that the public law ensured was that we would create for our kiddos in the schools the least restrictive environment, right? For some kiddos, that might mean going to the mainstream classroom and being part of the regular education classroom. For some kiddos, that might be, for this kiddo, he does better in that setting, but he needs a one-on-one paraprofessional to kind of help him through the day. That might mean that for this kiddo, he's going to be in that class for part of the day, and then we're going to pull him out and do some more intensive services in another classroom. So there are varying degrees, varying different environments that we can accommodate a kiddo, whether that's in the mainstream classroom or all the way into a self-sustained classroom where all of the kiddos in there are receiving more intensive services. Okay, the fourth element of this law was appropriate evaluation. Okay, most schools, and again, comment down below, tell me what your school does. A lot of schools do what they call a tri-annual review. So every 3 years, they update the evaluation to see, okay, where's this kiddo? How's he progressing? What are we working on? Do we need to revise that IEP, that Individualized Education Plan? And they use these consistent or constant every 3 years, or maybe your school does each year. It might be different in different districts, but they use those appropriate evaluations to help drive the plan, right? We can't have a plan if we don't know how the kiddo's doing and what the kiddo is or is not doing in the classroom. The fifth thing that it ensured was parent and teacher participation. And I think this is huge. I don't know, as a mama, I think you are one of the most important people at that table, right? And when you get to those IEP meetings, you are the star of the show. You are the expert on your child. You know your child better than anybody at that table, and you should and can have a strong voice of advocacy for your child. And this public law, the revisions in 1990, ensured that the parents are a vital part of this process, that you are a vital part of this process, and that the teachers and the homeroom teachers and everybody's coming together as a team to figure out the best way to educate your child. And then lastly, it ensured procedural safeguards. What does that mean? It means that each school has a written procedure as to how this is going to happen. How many days are we going to take to evaluate? How many days are we going to take to enact this plan? How many meetings will we have between this point and that point? And even though it might seem kind of rigorous sometimes, or it's hard sometimes as a parent to go through those procedures. You just kind of want to get it done and get it done now. I get that, but it's important that these were enacted so that it's the same and consistent across the board for every child. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about those 6 areas of this public law and how those play out within the educational setting, I want to kind of delineate the difference I mentioned earlier between the kind of the school age kiddos and the younger population, the birth to 3 population. As I've mentioned before, speech therapy services, there's kind of a medical side of the house, right? There are medical private outpatient services that can be provided to you through private pay or through your insurance. But then on this educational side, even if your child isn't school age, and you may say, well, he's not in kindergarten yet, that's okay. On this educational side, in this public law that we're talking about today, there are services guaranteed from birth to 3. We've mentioned these before. I'll put some links down in the show notes that we've talked about in previous videos. Birth to 3, early intervention. If your child is in that birth to 3 range, you're going to want to check out that link below to see kind of by your state what services are available, what's it called in your area, and you're going to want to check those out. The services look a little bit different. Instead of an IEP or an Individualized Education Plan, in that birth to 3 realm, they call it an IFSP. It's an Individualized Family Service Plan. These programs recognize the importance of the family unit, right, and your kiddos in your home more during that age and stage than when they hit the school age. So the family is taken into consideration. Often the goals and objectives are family goals, right? How can we help this family function as a unit while still meeting the needs of this child, but also the siblings and the parents and all of the family as a whole. So it's kind of cool to see the difference and kind of the why behind it, you know, recognizing the importance of that family unit for that age and stage of development when your kiddo's home with you, most likely more often throughout the day. Okay, so that's kind of the main difference between that birth to 3 range and from 3, when they hit 3, they transition to the public schools and fall under this public law that we've talked about. But as we're talking about these services, I just want to give you just a few things to consider. I have about 5 things that I'd like for you to think about as you're thinking about these services that are offered through your public school. The first one is just the eligibility requirements, right? As we mentioned when we talked about these services being free and appropriate to the kiddos, there is a limit, right, of what systems can do. When they are serving the masses, right, when they're serving so many kiddos, they have to draw the eligibility line perhaps a little bit lower than what a private setting might be able to do. In the private setting, if maybe your child is demonstrating a mild degree of difficulty or mild to moderate, that might be a good setting in which for you to obtain therapy, right? The school services often, because of just sheer manpower, they're having to limit it to maybe those kids who are more moderate to severe. So think about that, and I hear parents say, "Oh, well, he's done at school, so he must be okay," and that could be the case, right? That could be true, but it could also be that just because they didn't meet the eligibility requirements at the school doesn't mean that there aren't still some things that could be worked on in the home or through strategies that I've shared with you here on this channel. The other thing that they look at in the school system is whether or not it makes what they call educational impact. Right? So you may have a kiddo who has some speech articulation difficulties. Maybe he has a few sounds here and there with that pesky R, or maybe an S and Z where his tongue's protruding through his teeth. And those aren't necessarily things that in the reality, those aren't things that are going to hinder your child's performance in the classroom. And so that's part of the eligibility piece as well for those services, that they have to show that it's actually affecting your child's performance in the classroom and having an impact on his or her education. So those are a couple of things just to think about when you're thinking about eligibility and educational impact, and whether or not your child does or doesn't qualify for those services. Along those lines, the next thing that I would just encourage you is to consider private therapy, right? Consider supplementing with private therapy. Even if your child does qualify, chances are good that they're doing an amazing job, but that your child could benefit from some supplemental services. Again, either through strategies on this channel or through a private speech language pathologist. So consider those outside services as well, and consider if it might be beneficial to kind of supplement what he's getting in school with some additional help, either, like I said, through private clinic or through strategies on this channel. The third thing I want to just encourage you as parents, we mentioned you having a seat at the table. We mentioned you being a strong advocate for your child, and yes and amen to that. But I would encourage you to think about this idea of advocacy with grace. Right? Advocacy with grace. What do I mean by that? I mean extending grace to the professionals who are working so hard to care for your children. I know sometimes it can be frustrating as a parent when you want the most, the best, the fastest, the best services you can find for your kiddo. And again, you want to be your child's best advocate, and that's great. But you have to understand, again, these professionals are trying to ensure that for your child and hundreds of other children as well, right? So we have to give some grace, and we have to understand and give them the benefit of the doubt that they are trying to do the very best for your child, and everybody at that table has the best for your child and wants the best for your child. So we have to be gracious as we come together and advocate strongly for our kiddo, but to do it with some grace. Fourth, I'd like for you to think about kind of your overall schedule. You know, we mentioned school services. I did mention possible supplemental services outside of school. But I also want you to think about just the family dynamic and your schedule as a family unit. You know, that IFSP that we talked about in the birth to 3, we talked about the importance of the family unit in that age and stage. The importance of the family unit doesn't stop at age 3. It is still important that in your family, you start thinking about, when are we connecting as parents? When are we connecting as a family? When do we have time to just be, right? When does my child have time to just play and be a kid, right? So many times I see the pressure that I think you feel as a parent to again seek those services and get your child the best that you can and the most that you can in the shortest amount of time possible to give them the most help that you can provide, and that is awesome. But I also see sometimes that when you're running from therapy to therapy, and you pick them up from school and you take them to speech therapy or to OT or to ABA, you're running, right? You're just running. And I think sometimes the impact that has on us as parents, the impact that has on the family unit, and the impact that it has on your kiddo and your child's childhood, right? That when is he getting to play? When is he getting to have play dates? Those are all very important things in which language is also being stimulated, right? Where language comes to life. So be thinking about that, and as you're accessing more and more videos on this channel and hopefully doing some of these things in your home, be thinking about that piece as well as you're thinking about your overall family schedule. And finally, guys, I just want to encourage you that communication is the key. As you're interacting in these IEP meetings, as you're interacting with classroom teachers and professionals at school, open, clear, honest communication with grace is critical to this process. All right, so guys, I hope this has been helpful. As I said, if you haven't already, click here to subscribe to this channel. And then you're also going to want to check out this video that I did a while back about 7 things you can do if you're concerned about your child's speech and language development. And we'll see you next time here at Lingo Roo, where language comes to life.